Lubitch, and you're watching CAN TV. We're here today with Tracy Siska, so thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you so much for having me.
So you are the founder and executive director of the Chicago Justice Project. So talk to us about the work that you do.
So we were created, or I created the organization to basically force open transparency. We want to access and we want to give the public access to the data justice systems, justice agencies create every day, from the way a case enters the system through call for service to 911 typically, all the way through incarceration. We want to be able to allow the public to understand what these agencies are doing using the data from the agencies, and then hopefully we can use that to solve the problems that are in the system.
So why is this transparency so important, and where have you identified Chicago agencies falling short?
Oh God. Well, there's all kinds of it. The agencies constantly are using, do what we call weaponizing their data. So for the Chicago Police Department, they have a gun offenders dashboard online, which only gives you the view of the problems the way they want you to see it. That benefits them. The state's attorneys the same way with their dashboard they have online. They only release a minuscule piece of what they actually collect and make every day. So it just leaves the public uninformed, and it leaves it uninformed in a way that the agencies benefit from.
And so you recently sent out a letter detailing your frustrations with the lack of transparency coming out of State's Attorney Kim Foxx's office. So in the letter, you note that the Chicago Justice Project has been in litigation and fighting for open access to the state's attorney's crimes database since 2010. So talk a little bit more about that. So what information is the state's attorney's office withholding, and then why does the public need to have access to it?
So sure, their crimes database holds data on what's called felony review, which is the police have to receive authorization from the state's attorney to prosecute the press felony charges, just about everything but syndicated gambling and drugs. And then that's a way of filtering cases out. And then it also contains data on all the cases that make it through that process and how they're handled internally. The state's attorney now, even with their most recent update, releases about 175 fields of data, even though they told us in our pre-litigation talks that just recently broke down that their databases are 700 fields and 700 tables and 7,000 fields. So it's a really minuscule piece of what they collect, and it leaves the public uninformed about what they're doing. That is being done. There's a choices being made about what they're making public to, what they're making available to the public.
And so what would the public be able to do with those 700 tables you were, so it's almost like you need a translator, I think, in a lot of ways. So do you see Chicago Justice Project as the translator for that data?
Yeah, absolutely. We're unbiased. We're not tied to anyone. We're not trying to make friends with the agencies. We're not trying to assist them in anything. We're trying to uncover what they do, make it available for the public, policymakers, advocates, stakeholders, so we can all agree that there's one data set that we can actually agree on that is reality. What they do every day is knowable, but there's so much lying and dishonesty and weaponizing of the data that's impossible at any level for anyone to believe anything any of the leaders of the agencies are saying, even when they're saying stuff that benefits them. People just don't believe it. We want to put trust back in the data.
Right. And so are these agencies legally obligated to provide the public with all of the data that they collect?
Yes, they're legally obligated to make everything available, except there are very narrow exemptions, and most of it's around privacy, either ongoing investigations or privacies, both of which we respect. When we sued the state's attorney under Anita Alvarez, the state's attorney's office under Anita, they were being belligerent in their denials and dishonest left and right. And when Kim Foxx took office, I told her to her face, I'm like, I'm not here to be friends. That's not my organization's job. We're here, we're going to rip you open, whether you do it willingly or not. They eventually settled the suit that originated under Anita Alvarez. They told us, they made all these promises verbally about how they're going to work with us and do all these things. They're going to be super transparent. And that was it. Once we left that room, they reneged on everything they told us.
And so you've mentioned the weaponizing of data. So just give some examples of how these agencies are weaponizing the data that they do make available.
Sure. So for the police department, with that gun offender dashboard they have, they're just anyone who they claim, because it hasn't been proven in a court of law, has been caught with a gun, they get listed forever online. right? Now, if you're driving in a car and there's a gun found in the car and they can't tell who specifically it is, they can put that gun on any one of the 4 people in the car or all of them.
Oh,
And
that
if,
would be included in the data set.
yes, and oh yeah, and that search could be found illegally. So if you get arrested with a gun and they put you on that dashboard, and then your first court case, the judge throws it out for a massive violation of your rights because it's a massively illegal search. You're on the database, you're online forever. There's no follow-up because the police department has no interest in that follow-up, because that follow-up would show you how they're doing in their job, and they don't want to do that. They just want to portray who they want to portray negatively so it benefits them. They're not interested in transparency, integrity, and anything. It's all a bunch of lies and deceit and propaganda to serve their interests. That's what it's about. And all these agencies, to one extent or another, engage in all of the same practices. This is not unique to the police department or Kim Foxx's office. The only thing I guess is different is Kim has really made this great reputation for being progressive, and she's made some good decisions with that, but and transparency and honesty, integrity, there's no reason I would find to believe half of what they say about transparency.
And so another program that you have developed at Chicago Justice Project is the Justice Media Project. So can you talk a little bit more about what that program is?
Sure. So since 2011, we've been to one extent or another, scraping media sites. So our servers go onto the media websites every day, now every 2 hours, and capture their content on crime and justice and violence reporting. And we have algorithms now, we've trained them that go in and categorize that by crime, type of crime or violence. It also it documents what agencies are cited in the reporting, and it also geolocates. So if there's location data in that article, it'll tag it to a community area. So our goal is to, and we're in the process of designing that now, we have several years of data built up, is to take that data and automate a system where it'll compare the media reporting to crime and victimization numbers that are in the justice data that we're opening. And we're going to see how poorly or great the media covers crime and violence. I mean, we've already looked at it. I already can tell you those results, but we're going to be doing it in a near, almost near live, 8 days delayed, but in 8 days we'll be able to tell you how poorly they're covering things.
And so, I mean, where have news organizations in Chicago fallen short in their coverage of violence in Chicago? So how does this failure hurt Chicagoans and end up shaping or misshaping, I think you would argue, the narrative of our city's issues with violence?
So sure, and they've done this forever. They just don't care to any degree about violence against women. If you look at the most common call placed in 911, it's domestic disturbance. If you look at the most common violence report written up, it's domestic violence. That is absent from the news. We did a study we published in 2013, but we looked at a year of coverage in the Trib Sun Times. And so here's one of our startling findings. Of like the 203 reports the 2 newspapers did collectively on sexual assault, 195 were of stranger assaults. Okay, it means over 90%. The problem with that is 90% of the assaults are by acquaintances or people known to the victim. So the media is reporting something completely and utterly opposite of how it occurs in society. So you have half our population worried about protecting themselves from an assault that is only 10% likely if they're ever going to be assaulted, and not protecting themselves around things that are much more likely. 90% of the time, if they're going to be assaulted, it's going to be by someone they know. And they're just doing, the reporting is the exact opposite. And we've looked, and we're in the process of analyzing 17, 18, and 19. So we're going to come out with a report this fall in 3 years of coverage. And I've looked at it, it has not changed. It's the same thing.
Okay. And so, I mean, in the midst of the uprisings taking place across Chicago and across our nation, calling for racial justice, how does the work that you do at Chicago Justice Project contribute to help finding a path forward?
So 2 ways. One is we're hopefully going to be able to prove and document how race affects coverage in media and crime and violence, and that's going to be stark. So that's one. And then we're going to empower these people on the street and in those communities to advocate for change, but they're going to be able to advocate with facts and data, not just we think we know and we can prove it over years. So that's one way. The other way is it's the same thing with the criminal justice system. They think, when you can talk to sexual assault and domestic violence victims. If you're a sexual assault victim and you're a woman of color reporting an acquaintance rape, the advocates will tell you hardly ever charged. If you're a female of color who's a non-English speaker, or English is not your first language, forget about it. Your coverage is zero. They will not charge that case. That's what we've been told. We're going to be able to document things like that. We're going to document how one of the big problems with the media is we have turned what used to be police reporters reporting about the justice system and its impact into crime reporters who now go around documenting crime. And that's not to say it should be ignored, but it shouldn't be 100% of what they're doing. They're letting the justice system top to bottom skate on the impact of their policies and practices. And then they're doing this he said, she said around bail reform. Get the data, analyze it, find an answer. That's your job. Unfortunately, it's fallen to us, so that's what we'll be doing.